Thanks for tuning in.
We have an ample amount of news stories from this past week. In local news, this is the city of East Providence, Rhode Island, last night's meeting was the committee's first since taking those actions, and teachers turned out in droves. So many, in fact, that the city's fire marshal moved the meeting's venue from City Hall to the auditorium of East Providence High School. There, the board met before a packed house. Most teachers donned the towny pride colors, red and white. Some came from as far away as Portsmouth to lend support. One Situate teacher came despite being nearly 8 months pregnant. One teacher displayed a sign proclaiming, "A pay freeze is fair, a pay cut is unfair." Another sign read, "Teachers pay taxes too." Only a few signs among the meeting spectators supported the committee's actions. One read, "I support union concessions and taxpayer relief." And all we can do at this point is wait to see how that will fall out. This information comes from the Providence Journal.
In national news now, plane crashes in New York City after birds cut engines. A U.S. Airways jetliner crashed into the frigid Hudson River on Thursday afternoon after a collision with a flock of birds. This disabled both of its engines, sending more than 150 passengers and crew members scrambling onto rescue boats. Authorities say no deaths or serious injuries were immediately reported. Federal Aviation Administration spokeswoman Laura Brown said Flight 1549 had just taken off from LaGuardia Airport en route to Charlotte, North Carolina, when the crash occurred in the river near 48th Street in Midtown Manhattan. The plane, an Airbus A320, took off at 3:26 p.m. and went down minutes later, Brown said. There are eyewitness reports that the plane may have flown into a flock of geese. Brown said, she added, "Right now, we don't have any indication that this was anything other than an accident." The plane was submerged in the icy waters up to the windows. Rescue crews opened the door and pulled passengers in yellow life vests from the plane. Rescue boats and ferry boats that plied the Hudson surrounded the plane, which appeared to be slowly sinking in the near-freezing water on one of the coldest days of the year, with a temperature around 20 degrees. Witnesses said the plane's pilot appeared to guide the plane down. New York City firefighters and Coast Guard worked to rescue the passengers. This information comes from Yahoo News.
In other national news, impeached Illinois governor gets cold reception in the Senate. Illinois senators have taken their first steps toward an impeachment trial after giving embattled Governor Rod Blagojevich a cold reception hours into their new session. State lawmakers were to meet Thursday and move closer to a likely January 26th trial in determining whether Blagojevich is booted from office for corruption and abuse of power. On Wednesday, the Illinois House conducted another impeachment vote, reaffirming a decision reached last week. The only dissent came from the governor's sister-in-law, newly sworn in as a state representative. It was a bizarre day even for Illinois politics. The two-term Democratic governor presided over the first meeting of a Senate whose most urgent task is putting him on trial. The senators reacted with stony silence as to most of what Blagojevich said and did. Before he left, the governor alluded to his troubles and the upcoming Senate trial. There is nothing we can do now except to wait to see how this week turns out for Blagojevich. This information, again, comes from Yahoo News. Now we will be covering the world with two top news stories. Iraqi journalist throws shoes at Bush in Baghdad. A man identified as an Iraqi journalist threw shoes at, but missed President Bush during a news conference in Baghdad where Bush was making a farewell visit. Bush ducked, and the shoes, flung one at a time, sailed past his head during the news conference with Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki in his palace in the heavily fortified Green Zone. The shoe thrower, identified as Muntadar al-Zaidi, an Iraqi journalist with Egypt-based al-Baghdadiya television network, could be heard yelling in Arabic, "This is a farewell, you dog." While pinned on the ground by security personnel, he screamed, "You killed the Iraqis." Al-Zaidi was dragged away. While al-Zaidi was still screaming in another room, Bush said, "That was a size 10 shoe he threw at me. You may want to know." This comes from CNN, and here is the video of the event. And in other world news, Israel bombards Hamas hours before ceasefire vote.
Israel bombarded dozens of Hamas targets Saturday, hours before a government vote on Egypt-brokered ceasefire, prompting Egypt to demand an immediate halt to the 3-week-old Gaza offensive. Hamas sent mixed signals about whether it will accept the ceasefire proposal. Sami Abu Zahiri, a spokesman linked to the group's leadership in exile in Syria, said militants would keep fighting. Hamas will not bow to invading forces. We will not raise the white flag, he said in Turkey. But after weeks of heavy losses, leaders inside Gaza have signaled they are ready for a deal, and Hamas' delegation was in Cairo for more truce negotiations. More than 1,100 Palestinians have been killed, according to the Gaza health officials, and 13 Israelis have also died. Israel's 12-member security cabinet was accepted to approve the Egyptian proposal for an immediate 10-day ceasefire. Israeli forces will remain in Gaza, and the territory's border crossings with Israel and Egypt will remain closed, though security arrangements are made to prevent Hamas arms smuggling.
Under the deal, Egypt would shut down weapons smuggling routes with international help and discussions on opening Gaza's blockaded border crossings. Hamas's key demand would take place at a later date. The Israeli vote was set after Israel and the U.S. signed on Friday a memorandum of understanding in Washington that calls for expanded intelligence cooperation to prevent Hamas from rearming. Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni, who signed the deal with Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, called it a vital complement for a cessation of hostility. Egypt has been a key interlocutor in weeks of negotiations to end the assault on Gaza sparked by years of Hamas rocket fire at southern Israel. I demand Israel today stop its military operations immediately, the Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak said. I demand from its leaders an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, and I demand from them a full withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Strip. This report comes from the Associated Press. Coming up, our entertainment segments after this short break, brought to you by Apple iPod Touch.
Oscar plays The Guessing Game. The folks behind the 81st Academy Awards have hatched a new stunt, ostensibly to lure millions of viewers to their television sets on Hollywood's biggest night. Keep the A-list presenters a surprise. The move breaks from past tradition when the Academy issued a press release trumpeting the names of the presenters in the weeks prior to the show. Organizers are hoping the mystery becomes a parlor game to gin up more excitement with the global audience. At this point, the Academy is willing to do anything to boost ratings. Last year's Oscar cast, which saw No Country for Old Men take home the Best Picture prize, was watched by 31.7 million people, the lowest rated ceremony ever. By contrast, 1998's ceremony, which crowned Titanic, drew 57.2 million. This information comes from Yahoo News.
The Office is back. Yes, our favorite Scrantonites return tonight, and as Rainn Wilson tells us exclusively, some very big stuff goes down, with the Dwight, Angela, Andy love triangle in the next 2 episodes. Tonight's episode is titled The Duel, and it's about what happens when Andy finds out that he's been, well, cuckolded by a stronger, smarter male. He challenges Dwight for a duel for Angela's heart. Now for our music short, we're going to count down the top 5 artists of the week. At number 5 is Rihanna with Take a Bow.
At number 4 is Flowbots with Handlebars.
I can ride my bike with no handlebars, no handlebars, no...
At number 3 is Leona Lewis with Bleeding Cloud.
You cut me open and I keep bleeding, keep bleeding.
At number 2 is Metro Station.
Come on, shake.
And at number 1 is Katy Perry with I Kissed a Girl.